Hi, welcome to this week's bonus coop. We recorded this as part of our wrap pod following the Leinster v Scarlets match, which you'll find on Apple, Spotify, and all the other usual places. I've been joined this week by Tom Coleman and Rich Mifsud. And the word on the street says that Jacques Neinaber is done parading a second World Cup triumph around South Africa and could well be joining up with the Leinster squad this week. So just what exactly are we expecting from him, Tom?
Well, I suppose the question for us all is: are we going to turn into South Africa light? You know what I mean? Are we looking at the wingers that South Africa have and see who can slot into those roles, or can we see Jamison Gibson Park parading around in his jocks in the dressing room like Faf de Klerk? So how far this are we going to see blue traffic lights in the
Wonder what
RDS?
color light you'd shine to get him to do that.
Well, yeah, well, he can use the scoreboard in the RDS because that blinds the
True.
opposition and that the nuclear blue that we have there for the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see what he does. Look, I won't say he won't get a free pass. The guy has earned the right to come in and do what he needs. He's a double winning World Cup coach, and the hope is that Lancaster was there. What was it, 6 years at that stage? Maybe 7 years, 6 years. A lot of times just a fresh voice and a new outlook. On one hand, Neinaber will look at Leinster and go, they're millimeters from winning, a couple of Heineken Cups in a row. They lost by point last year. So does he say to himself, I need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak? Or, does he just want to tweak it slightly and put his stamp on it? As we spoke about in the main part of the pod, defense is one of his fortes, and we are already starting to see signs of some altering in Leinster's defensive system. As I said before, Leinster was a team that would happily try and keep as many bodies, 13 or 14 across the pitch, and put one or two in one in a row just to tackle, or maybe an attempt at a jackal, and then get the team on the fourth or fifth phase when they run out of bodies because they're committing players to the ruck to secure their own ball. But what we've seen so far, granted only in snippets, is Leinster sort of shooting up some defenders. Obviously, Gary Ringrose is naturally gifted to do that in that 13 role. That's something that he should slot into doing very easily. But we've seen the likes of Andrew Porter doing it, James Ryan, Joe McCarthy doing it in that game as well. So, yeah, it looks like there's an influence from afar at the moment because we are defending slightly different. But as for the expectations, look, Leinster, the club, whatever about the supporters, but the players in the club will be expecting the challenge for 2 trophies again this year. That is the remit every year. That's the bottom line. That's not arrogance, and nor are we entitled to be winning both trophies every year. But Neinaber will be eyes wide open on that. He knows Leinster want to win a European Cup, and they want to, get a league title back and add the number 9 title to the 8 they already have. And it'll be interesting to see what he brings to the table, coaching wise, on how he can tweak it. Which he has a lot of good players at his disposal, but he has a lot of good players at his disposal at South Africa as well. One other thing I'd be interested to see is, will the Neinaber system, when you see it South Africa, it seems to outweigh the players' abilities, as in the system becomes the star person rather than the players. And that'll be an interesting dynamic to see happen at Leinster, because Leinster do play an attacking brand of rugby, and individual skills are showcased, and it'll be interesting to see, will that have to be balanced out? Will we be looking at Neinaber's Leinster rather than sort of Leinster's Leinster? I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's interesting to see how that will develop, because the coaches, both Rassie and Jacques Neinaber's stamp on South Africa is huge. The way they play, so it's more so it's bigger than the individual, and interesting times ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, it sounds like at this stage, it sounds like the perfect coming together, because you look at how Leinster have fallen short the last couple of seasons. They've had great seasons of wins, and then when it gets to the big games, it's always 1 point, 2 points, 1 point, 2 point defeats, nearly there. And then you look at, it looked right when it was announced, but then they went on. you saw how South Africa won the World Cup with 3 knockout wins by 1 point. I mean, that wasn't, once is one thing, but when you do 2, 3 times, it's not just an accident. They have the ability to finish on top in those games, whereas we're falling short. So hopefully he'll be able to maybe get us that extra bit. So what do you think, Rich?
Yeah, it's in terms of playing styles, that's the great imponderable, because I know it's a cliche, but the Leinster style of play, Leinstertainment, for want of a better expression, is in the DNA. It's what the supporters love about Leinster. So it'll be interesting to see whether he tweaks that, or whether the use of, as Thomas quite astutely pointed out, the new style, albeit in little snippets, defensively, is that intended to secure transition ball, because we're very good at transition, and finishing off those opportunities, possibly, and an emerging of both without necessarily tweaking the attacking side of things. But it remains to be seen. My biggest take, I think, from Jacques Neinaber, at least what I expect, or hopeful certainly, is the changing of those L's for W's by the 1 point if necessary, like you've just mentioned, Jeff. It's the winning mentality. It's the dog that the South Africans seem to have from birth. It's this desire, this attritional ability to keep going and keep going and keep, it's and we've beaten them regularly, as in Ireland recently, but the reality is that they are incredibly difficult to beat. Not just are they incredibly difficult to beat, they usually end up on the right side of the result, albeit by 1 point. That takes guts, gumption, dog, whatever you want to call it, whichever adjective you want to use, or metaphor. It's, and I think that, well, I don't think I know that the top 2 inches is where we've come up short in the last few years in terms of the winning of trophies. I mean, let's not get away from the fact that we're not the only team playing in these competitions, and that it has become markedly more difficult to win the URC than any of its previous iterations. They're gone are the days of just showing up and you're going to win anyway, so might as well give them the trophy in September. Those days are gone, as they should be, and they've made Leinster an infinitely better team than they were then. And of course, the greatest litmus test, at least of the Northern Hemisphere, is clearly the Champions Cup. And getting to the finals, getting to the final itself is an achievement. To win it takes that that extra bit, and I think that is what Neinaber is going to bring. I really do. I certainly hope he does. But like you said, it's no coincidence that he wins. He's 2 World Cups on the trot, with a combination of skill, a combination of attritional carries. I think that's what's been missing for us, and I think that's what he'll bring to the party.
Just one little quick thing to add, just without stretching it on. I think one thing I'm hugely positive about is that Jacques Neinaber, again, just from his time down in Munster and definitely his time in South Africa, he seems a pretty humble guy that has no issue with the more egotistical guy taking the lead and the glory. And I think that's a perfect match for Leo. Leo's a guy that, came in as head coach, realised he's good at X, Y, and Z, that he wasn't good at ABC, and he had no problem bringing in somebody that high class caliber of Stuart Lancaster, and his ego didn't get in the way. So I think you've 2 guys that there's no bullshit there. They'll do the best for the team. They won't get in each other's way. There'll be no Leo's team or Neinaber's team. They won't care about that. So I think from a personality point of view, I think that's the best match. And I think if that's working, I think then therefore everything else should come good after that.
Absolutely. And I mean, you couldn't, even though he's coming into another situation where he's he's a senior coach. He's definitely at the top level of the coaching, but he's not the only down there. I don't think you could get a bigger contrast in personalities between the one he's with now and the one he was with before. So it'd be interesting to see how he gets on there. But listen, we talked to, if you want to have a listen to our pod of the Scarlets pod, the boys did a great job of explaining the way not only is Neinaber coming in, physically coming to the setup hopefully next week in time for the Munster match, but he's probably been doing Zoom calls and you can actually see it, possibly parts of his theory, and especially on the defensive side of things coming into it. And they explain it really well in the pod, so be sure to check that out. Right, that's it for our bonus clip this week. Many thanks again for tuning in. As ever, be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe wherever you can, and follow us on all of our social media channels.